Last winter, the average American household spent $1,847 heating a home that was supposedly insulated to modern building code standards. Not a drafty 1960s farmhouse, not a condemned property, a new home, or a recently renovated one, with fresh insulation installed by licensed contractors, stamped and approved by a building inspector. And it still failed. Quietly, invisibly, expensively. If your energy bills have been climbing every year while your thermostat stays the same, you're not imagining it. Your insulation is lying to you. And today, we're going to prove it. There was a time when insulation was one of the most honest products in a house. You packed fiberglass bats into your walls in 1974, and 30 years later, they were still doing their job. Not perfectly, but consistently. The material was dense. The installation was straightforward. And the performance you paid for was roughly the performance you got. Homeowners in the 1970s and 1980s who upgraded their insulation saw energy bills drop and stay down. That was the deal. You invest once, you benefit for decades. That relationship made sense. Builders understood it. Homeowners trusted it. The product earned its place inside every wall of every home in America. Somewhere around 2003, a quiet revolution happened inside the insulation industry, and nobody sent you a memo. Manufacturing consolidation accelerated. A handful of massive corporations absorbed the smaller regional producers, and with consolidation came something the industry calls value engineering. That's the polite term, the version they use in boardrooms and earnings calls. What it means in practice is simpler. Find every place we can reduce material cost without changing the number on the label. The R value stays the same on the packaging. The density of the product does not. Let's start with the number printed on every roll of insulation at every big box store. The R value. R value measures thermal resistance, how well a material slows heat transfer. Higher number, better insulation. Simple enough, except the R value rating on that packaging is measured under laboratory conditions. Controlled temperature, zero air movement, perfect installation. Flat, uncompressed, uninterrupted material tested in a sealed chamber. That is not your attic. That is not your wall cavity. Industry analysis shows that real-world insulation performance can fall between 20% and 40% below the labeled R value before a single thing goes wrong with installation. The number on the bag is a best-case scenario. You are not living in a best-case scenario. You are living in a house with gaps, with air movement, with corners and wiring and plumbing running through every single cavity that insulation is supposed to fill. But here's where it gets expensive, because even legitimate insulation can fail you before the first winter is over. The installation problem is not an accident. It is almost inevitable given how new construction actually works. Insulation contractors are often the lowest bid subcontractor on a job site. They are scheduled between the framers and the drywall crew. They have hours, not days. Repair technicians who work in existing homes report seeing the same patterns constantly. Bats that are folded instead of cut, gaps left around electrical boxes, compressed material jammed into spaces too narrow to hold it properly. Every fold, every gap, every compressed section is a thermal bridge, a direct path for heat to escape your home. And here is the part nobody tells you. Once the drywall goes up, it is gone. You cannot see it. You cannot fix it without tearing open your walls. The inspection passed, the contractor got paid, and the problem is sealed inside your home permanently. The third failure point is one that most homeowners never discover until they're staring at an energy bill that makes no sense. Compression, fiberglass insulation, and many blown-in products rely on trapped air pockets to create their thermal resistance. The material works because of its loft, its thickness, its ability to stay fluffy and full inside the cavity, but over time, gravity, settling, and moisture work against it. Industry data shows that fiberglass bats in attic floors can lose up to 30% of their effective R value within the first decade simply from compression and settling. That R38 attic insulation you paid for in year 1 is performing closer to R26 by year 10. And if any moisture got into the assembly, from a slow roof leak, from condensation, from inadequate vapor management, the number drops faster. Wet insulation is essentially decorative. It holds almost no thermal value, and it holds moisture against your framing, your sheathing, your structure. So why does any of this happen in a regulated industry with standardized testing and government-mandated codes? Because the regulation stops at the label and not at the wall. Building codes specify minimum R values. They do not mandate installed performance verification. An inspector looks at the material in the cavity. They confirm it is present. They check the labeled value. They do not, and in most jurisdictions cannot, test whether that insulation is actually performing once the house is buttoned up. Manufacturers discovered something important. They are responsible for what the product does in a laboratory, not in your house, not after installation, not 5 years from now. That gap between certified performance and delivered performance is where the business model lives. A thinner bat costs less to produce, ships lighter, installs faster, passes inspection, and underperforms quietly for the next 20 years. And it's not just the manufacturers driving this. The trap runs deeper than a single factory. Builders operating on tight margins select insulation based on cost per square foot, not long-term thermal performance. Big box retailers stock what moves volume. Code minimums become the de facto standard, not the floor for something better. And energy auditors, the professionals who could actually diagnose the problem, are not part of the standard home buying process. So the system completes itself. Material gets cheaper, performance degrades. Homeowners pay more to heat and cool spaces that should cost less. And nobody in the supply chain, is legally responsible for the gap. Here's what this cost you in real numbers. Because abstract outrage doesn't pay your heating bill. If your home is underperforming by just 25% of its rated insulation value, consumer analysis suggests you are spending between $400 and $900 extra per year on energy, depending on your climate and home size. Over 10 years, that's up to $9,000. Over 20 years, that's a number that should make you sit down. And that does not include the cost of diagnosing the problem, remediating moisture damage if it developed, or re-insulating sections of your home to correct what was done wrong the first time. The $1,400 insulation job that passed inspection can generate $15,000 in downstream costs over the life of the home. So what do you actually do with this information? First, if you are buying a new construction home or completing a renovation, ask for a blower door test after insulation is installed and before drywall closes the walls. This is a real diagnostic. It reveals air leakage, the thing R value alone cannot capture. Second, request the installer's density specification in writing, not just the R value label. A reputable contractor will give it to you without hesitation. Third, consider a thermal imaging inspection in year 2 or 3 of ownership. Infrared cameras show exactly where your walls are bleeding heat. The technology is affordable and the results are undeniable. You are not powerless here. The insulation industry counts on homeowners not knowing these questions exist. Now you know them. And when enough buyers start demanding installed performance instead of labeled performance, the business model has to change. If this opened your eyes, subscribe. Because next week we're pulling apart the window efficiency scam, and what we found will make you look at every ENERGY STAR sticker very differently.